everybody? Episode 26 here. So, we got a rear end sitting in the car. Awesome. Got some tires sitting up there. I've been spending the afternoon doing the rear tire stand, getting that thing all set up, messing with, the laser, the alignment, plumb bobs, just getting it dialed in, figuring out where I'm going to put my number one bar, and then that relationship connects to where the axle is going to sit, where the tires are going to sit, and everything. So you can see that when I initially did this tire stand, I wanted it so that it was adjustable, but I had my math wrong on where the tires needed to be. So when I cut these 2" by 2" tubes here, I should have made them longer. So I'm actually at the end of my travel. So I was only able to weld the outside, which is fine. It ended up working out good. So, I got the plumb bob line from the center of the fender. We measured that in the one video. So I got that line there on both sides. And then I centered this side to side. And then what I did is I took my level right here. Make sure it's still zeroed. I think so. So I took my level, got it sitting on there. Is it not zeroed still? Might not be zeroed still. All right. Oh, definitely still zero. Nope. There's a piece of dirt somewhere. It's hard to do this with the camera in my hand because I can't wipe everything down appropriately. I'm just kind of trying to wipe it on my shirt. Unfortunately, when you're doing fabrication work in a garage, it's hard to get a nice, clean, flat surface. There it goes. All right. I haven't put the level back on it since I put the axle on there, so I'm hoping that everything's still sitting pretty flat. Looks like we're 0.1 off. So the back's just a smidge low. Oh, yeah, just barely. Just enough to trigger it. Not a big deal. That 0.1, I mean, you can see just that little bit. You can barely see an air gap through there. I hope that was too much. That 0.1 is probably 60 thou tops. So that's going to be fine for where the tire's sitting. I'm pretty happy with that. So we got that leveled. And then what I would do is sorry if I seem a little out of it. It's just been another long day for me. Let me get this level back straight. Trying to get the level straight down Broadway there. All right, cool. I got a line on the back of the firewall. I don't know if you can see it from where you are. Let's see if I can zoom in. There's a line right behind the green there on the back of that firewall. So I got that all situated. And then there's 2 lines on the rear differential from when we built it. So I know this thing's nice and center. And then what I also did is I took my tape measure from B pillar to B pillar on both sides and made sure it's centered that way too. So laser is center on the B pillar, center on the firewall, center on the axle. We got the axle stand sitting level. I took my little scale. I think I wiped off my marks already. Oh, no, I still got some black marks right there and there where the level was sitting on the scale. Oh no, my battery's I think going dead. There you go. So they're sitting on those black marks, which is about 3/4 of an inch. So from the top of the bar to the laser's 3/4 of an inch, which means I needed to make from the laser to the bottom of the number 1 bar. This is the number 1 bar. I needed to make that 2 3/4. And then that would give me an overall 4 inches to the ground from the bottom of the number 1 bar. Because the ground is halfway through that tube. So where the tire actually sits in the tubes there, halfway through the tube is where the ground is. So I then measured from the laser, which again, it's going dead. I don't know if you can see it, or maybe the axle's in the way now. But the laser was like somewhere in here. And so I measured from there up 2 3/4 and marked a spot. So our number 1 bar here will be sitting right there on that rocker, going over to that one too, which is a good height. It's about 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of this rocker, which is just about where I wanted it. I wanted it pretty flat. I want those rockers really close to the ground. I want them to look as low as possible without being undrivable, essentially. So I'm pretty happy with that. Like I said, it's about 3/4 of an inch to the bottom of the rocker from the bottom of the number 1 bar. And then to the ground from the bottom of another 1 bar is at 4 inches we're shooting for. And then, of course, I can always lift it too. I can drop that rear axle, lift the car up some if I needed to. But the 4-inch mark is where I'm shooting for, and we're going to try and keep it right there. So I got that thing at that height with the laser. I got my number 1 bar where I'm happy with it. So now I know when I put the tire up on there, it's going to be exactly where I want it. I did the same thing on the other side. Put the level over there, got those 2 bars level, got them centered, got them 3/4 of an inch down from the laser. That way I know it's the same over there as it is over here. So we got 2 identical settings there. I set the axle on here with the stand. And then I got those axle stands I made. I don't think those have been in a video yet. Essentially, it's just a 3/4 inch bar there and 2 3/4 inch bars here. And this gap is just wide enough for the bolts that go through it. So it's just like basically a U, 1, 2, 3. It's a U shape welded to this bottom bar. And then I centered them all. I actually drew this up on CAD. I centered them all so that the same stick out on both sides of this bar should be good. And then what I did to double check that is I got the plumb bobs here hanging off the axle hub. And this thing actually should be pretty stable now that I haven't been knocking it all around. So I would measure like that and then flip this around and measure like that. And then that way I know that the center of this is between this exactly. So I know that the center of here is to the wheel well center, right? The center of there is in between the bars. So now I know that the center line, axle center line is right exactly where I got this mark. The only thing that I got left to do is to make sure the height this way is good, which is just loosening up those shock bolts and lifting this thing up and down and getting the height set properly. So I still got that to do. I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to do that. I'll probably lay the level across and just measure from, the level up to the axle hub, and then subtract the radius of here. So I'll probably lay the level like this. See if I can do this one-handed. Get the level in there, somewhere in there, like that. So bottom of the level to the axle hub, and then subtract the radius of this circle here. And then that will get me the center of the axle. And then, like I said, I'll just loosen these bolts up and go up and down with it. And then I also got to loosen those bolts and set my pinion angle. So how we got the car set up is this guy here is on an upward of 2 degrees. That way when the car's going down the track, it's going to lift at least 2 degrees. Even though the car's going to squat and pick up the rear, it's still going to lift the front a bunch. So I got this thing 2 degrees up, and that means that one needs to be 2 degrees down, okay? Because you need opposing angles for the drive shaft speed to be the same. So this one's going to have to be 2 degrees down. This one will be 2 degrees up. So I'll have to set the pinion angle, set the height on both sides. And that should be pretty much getting that axle and getting the jigs all happy, getting them all centered and everything. And then from there, I'll set the tires in place. What I thought about doing, I don't want, the budget's tight with getting tubing and the dies and the next step going. And I don't really want to spend the money on the axles and the spool right now. So what I'll probably end up doing is taking the stock axles, cutting them, and just getting them in there as like mock-up. That way I can bolt the wheels up to it and know that they're flat. So I'll probably end up doing that. And then I'll have a solid mounted rear end assembly back there. And that will give me a good idea of what I need to do for the rear construction on the chassis, the front construction, the number 1 bar stuff, the 4 link bars, so I can get all that stuff. I can get my low prep bars in. And then once that stuff's in, you know, start building the rest of the chassis, the wheel tubs, all that stuff can just start getting hammered out. I'm going to cut this video off short. I'm going to post a cool little clip I did. And I posted it on my Instagram. I'll post it here right now. So in that clip, you can see I have a chromoly tube going from the pinion to the axle, or pinion to the transmission. And you can see how nice and straight it is. It's on like a 1.5 degree tilt, which is good. It's up in the car, which is good. So I'm really happy with how that looks and how that turned out. The next video, I don't know what it'll be about exactly. I still got a little bit more work to do on this. I'm either going to do the axles in the rear end or start cutting the plates here and here. Either way, you guys have a good night and thank you for watching.